Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast, make sure you subscribe and like and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. I forgot that I changed my intro, so I was half remembering my old intro and then trying to read my new intro. But thank you for joining us today on this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Lisa Luckett. Lisa is a social visionary, an advocate for kindness, and an advocate for gaining wisdom by experiencing life head on. Her mantra, choose courage, is the foundation of her social vision, reminding us that we are strong, resilient, and have a choice in how we live our lives. As a 9/11 widow, single mother of 3 young adults, and breast cancer survivor, Lisa knows the value of life struggles and sees the gift or silver lining in every situation. Lisa believes that life is happening for us, not to us. An expert in emotional preparedness, Lisa is a voice of reason in the chaos. She's an award-winning author, inspirational speaker, life coach, and the founder and CEO of Cozmeena, Enlightening Living, a brand of kindness and social vision for the 21st century. Lisa's memoir, The Light in 9/11, Shocked by Kindness, Healed by Love, was released in 2018. I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I still remember, I'm not even kidding, when I saw your LinkedIn profile. And I almost didn't reach out to you because I was like, this woman is doing some stuff. But I was so happy that I reached out to you, and our initial conversation was like so meaningful to me, one that I will probably always remember. I don't normally just start getting emotional with first phone calls. So I so appreciate your time. I so appreciate that conversation and everything you are and everything that you're doing for the world.
Wow. Thanks. Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here. I've waited for this for months now to have a chance
Yes.
to talk to you again. So yeah,
Yes.
it's a very powerful thing when you share a moment like we did, and I hope we do today. And because it's really about vulnerability, right? And that's the connection, right? We feel so inhibited when we show our true selves or our emotions, and then ultimately look how bonded we are from it. So
Yes.
I just encourage people to just be who they are.
Yes, yes, I totally agree with that. And you have such a story and such a journey that you've gone through. And I'm so excited to have you here and to talk about it. What I'd like to really do is just kind of give you the floor and kind of let you talk about the story, the story that changed the trajectory of your entire life, and kind of go from there, if you're okay with that.
Sure. Okay, so it's really interesting to tell this story because as time goes by, it changes, and I become more and more objective, and I see it differently, and I see ways to generalize about it that maybe I would be very detailed and more in the nitty-gritty 10 years ago. So as you said, my husband was killed in 9/11, and he was in the North Tower. He was above the fire. He had walked down in the bombing in 1993. So 9/11 was my second experience of terrorism. And, it's interesting because one of my premises that came away from my whole life experience is that everything we go through is preparing us for the next thing. Meaning that because I had gone through the first experience, I was so much more educated. In other words, I knew they were above the fire. And there was no coming down from that. That was just a done deal from the minute I could see it on the television, because in the first bombing, there was no smoke outside of any of the buildings. And he
Wow.
came home like 5 hours later, having walked down 104 flights, and it took like 4.5 hours. He was covered in soot. And there wasn't even
Wow.
a fire to be seen. So I knew in comparison, there was just no way. But you keep hope like you do. And that's our nature as humans. Until we know, we're going to be hopeful. And I think our hope is actually what we always have to remember, especially
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Today, it's getting pretty negative out there. It's pretty tough. It's pretty divisive. But we have to remember that we're so much more part of one thing. And we've lost track of that a little bit in the last couple of years, that we aren't separate. We are one. We are part of a whole. And that's where the disconnect comes for so many people, is we feel so judged and different when in fact we're so much the same. So anyway, my story is basically that 9/11 for me became a catalyst for remarkable emotional growth, what they now term as PTG, or post-traumatic growth. It's a thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So my story to other people is, yes, mine has this really extreme, like very noteworthy, there's a lot of obviously notoriety around an international situation that has been looked at from up, down, every way but sideways. For the most part, it's certainly well massaged, and it affected everyone, right? We can't travel the same way because of 9/11. TSA came in because of 9/11. Now we're going to have masks and mask mandates and things like that because of COVID. So the last 20 years have been basically bookended by two collective traumas that have changed us internationally and culturally forever. That's not always a bad thing, but it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah.
So my point to people now is that whatever you're going through is an opportunity to grow from.
Yeah.
Not to say that it doesn't stink, and not to say it doesn't hurt like hell, but knowing that, and this is what in my 60 plus years I can look back and say, the wisdom of life does kind of gel at one point, and you can say, you know what, no matter how bad it is, I'm going to get through it.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it is, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. 100%. So you were a mother when
Yep.
all of this happened. How many children did you have?
So I had just turned 41. My birthday's in early September, and I found out I was pregnant with my third child on my 40th birthday the year
Okay.
before.
Oh my gosh.
So I had a 7-year-old, a 4-month-old, a 4-year-old, and a 4-month-old. But I was
Wow.
older. I was 41.
Okay.
Many women in my situation, and the company that my husband worked for lost 658 people
Oh
out
my
of
gosh.
900. So it was a complete demolish. But so there were a lot of us in the statistics of young parents, but most women are at least 5 or 10 years younger than I am with the same age children.
Yeah.
So that was a benefit to me because I had a little more life on the planet. So the statistics are, we had these little kids, but we were inundated with love. We were inundated with kindness. The thing about 9/11, and it was my first experience of the kindness of strangers, when in fact, in my own very dysfunctional first 40 years with a very broken, dysfunctional family and very broken, dysfunctional in-laws, I had never been loved. No one ever was nice. Not even the people that
Wow.
should have been nice, they weren't nice. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, from around the world, I'm getting the kindness of strangers.
Wow.
And that energy, that love energy, if anybody can remember back where they were at the time, and the kind of what was being literally sent to us through the ethers was received. I got it. And the healing power of prayer, the healing power of kindness is real.
Yeah.
So, that's where there's a hopefulness. And the sad truth of it all is, however long you spend on the planet, you are going to have moments of trauma.
Yeah.
And the question is, who shows up for you? And usually people show up. People you don't expect show up.
Yeah.
It's not your best friends. It's not your family. It's these tertiary relationships that show up that are just the right people in the right moment. And it doesn't have to be for years and years. It doesn't have to be for weeks or months. It could be for an hour.
Yeah.
And it changes your life.
Yes. I agree. What made you write a book?
It's such a long story to tell. We don't have 10 hours. People would be glazed over and falling asleep. So yeah, it's because the story is really about seeking, spiritual enlightenment, that I believe that trauma is an opener.
Yeah.
And that pain is the rocket fuel that shoots you forward to grow, to get it to stop.
Yeah.
Because you want the pain to stop. So pain is a purposeful thing. It wouldn't be in nature if we didn't need it. So it must have a purpose.
Yeah. I agree. We were talking about my son. We're kind of going off the
Mhm.
rails here, but we were talking about my son right before we got online here. And I think we might have kind of covered this a little bit when you and I were first talking, but we were talking for so long we had to hang up because there was just so much time. Um, but on that same subject that you're talking about, as far as trauma equals growth, what do you, in your just personal opinion, mother to mother, what is your opinion on raising children who haven't had trauma versus, because I think about this sometimes. I had so much, and that is why I am so strong. Like, I know that I am strong mentally and emotionally because of the stuff that I've gone through. And then I see my son who's 17, and I have, granted, I've raised him very independently. He does a ton of things on his own. He doesn't need me. He works, he takes care of his schoolwork, he gets straight A's. He's doing all of the things all on his own. I don't ask him to do anything, he does dishes, laundry, everything on his own. But the resilience, the
Mhm.
perseverance that is needed in order to really make it in this world when you go out and about. What is your opinion on that as far as dealing with it in a young age and using that versus kind of being sheltered at a young age?
This is a big conversation.
Yeah.
So what my response to you was when you said my
Thank
son's
you.
very independent is I said he's a rarity in today's generation of kids. The truth is it's I almost wonder if it's an every other generation thing, that because of my generation, right? People who have kids, but my kids are between 20 and 27.
Okay.
All right, but I'm 60. So I was born in 1960. So it's almost like a decade by decade or a generation by generation shift in the culture of how we do things. Right.
Yeah.
So my generation of parents were raised and came of age in the 50s when everything had to be perfect and everything fit in the box, and nobody talked about anything. And as long as it looked good, it was good.
Yeah.
But there was an enormous amount of emotional neglect, an enormous
Yes.
amount of disconnect,
Yes.
and an enormous amount of narcissism in those parents. And there's a reason we talked about that too. That came out of the post World War II boom of prosperity, that they became of age and late, early high school into college and out, and their world was handed to them on a silver platter. And the truth is, narcissism is foundational insecurity. They knew they didn't earn it. And they heard from their families, the 40s, the greatest generation told them over and over how lucky they were and that they better be appreciative.
Wow. Okay.
All
That
right. So,
totally makes sense.
right. So we can't really understand parenting now unless we back up.
Yes.
Right. So what I did to my children is I overserved them. And the people that
Yes.
I raised, my co-parents, in my community, we raised them and we did everything. And they had to participate in everything. We had to follow them like lemmings. Everybody had to play travel soccer. Everybody had to do this. That was the cocktail. It's all people could talk about. And the bragging rights that go with children. And it's really very sad because we went from being completely underserved and underseen as children
Yeah.
to over celebrating our children. So
Yes.
as a result, they don't have the resiliency.
Yeah.
The idea of the helicopter parent was one, and then it was the snowplow parent that plowed everything out from in front of the child. So they never had to do anything or deal.
Yeah.
And, yes, I think we are, my kids have had trauma, but I think all kids have trauma, because the parent that's the mother that's at home who's not working and wants to be an at-home mother, but isn't cleaning her house anymore because she has a cleaning lady, so there's no chores that are being delegated, so right.
Yeah, like even the house, everyone in Boca, you pay someone to do your lawn work. So
Absolutely.
like part of my trauma was my parents making my sister and I go out and mow the lawn and pick up the clippings and trim the bushes and shovel the driveway. There's no snow in Florida. Someone does our lawn for us. Granted, he does so much, that's net that to live his life, but those extra things that cause like the sweat and the hatred like towards your parents,
Right.
it isn't a thing necessarily.
No. But
Yes.
it's sad because the truth is they're gonna be mad at you anyway. They might as well learn how to do something while they're at it,
Yes.
and that's the self-esteem comes from being able to complete a job, comes from be able to make your own bed. The most insecure thing is that when you don't know how to do something.
Yeah.
So we're really robbing them in many
Yeah.
ways of their natural ability to perform.
Yeah. I often find myself thinking of things that I can do to cause stress in his life. I really do. These are things that I think about. Like, what can I do to get him to feel uncomfortable? And I take from what what's provided me, conversations with his father, who's no longer in my life, but still in his life, and confrontation with that and forcing him to have uncomfortable conversations over the phone versus text, and seeing his perspiration and his anxiety, but knowing that that's good for him. But I just feel like it's so, we're so inundated with, is that the word, inundated
Mhm.
with technology and help, and like everything's so easy nowadays. It's difficult for me to find situations for him on purpose, because I really am grateful for the shit. Like, wasn't grateful at the time for the shit I went through, but super grateful now
Right.
that I went through so much stuff. I'd love for you to talk about this traumatic growth, because I've never heard of this before.
Right. So that's a new term in psychology, actually, that came out in the last 5 or 6 years. And I was thrilled because that's exactly what my experience was. So trauma is a catalyst. And the word trauma is a tough one. Tragedy, trauma, difficulty, struggle. I like struggle personally because, we're think of it as, kind of expanding, the chicken coming out of the egg, the bird being hatched, right? You're pushing out, you're stretching your elbows and your arms just to push through things. It's not always negative.
Mhm.
And yes, it hurts, but again, it's a spin. It's what you mentioned earlier. I believe that life is happening for you. In other words, it's just a shift of perspective. And it goes, instead of it happening to you, which puts you in a victim position, right? You're in a defensive position. You're thrown back. Why is this? Ouch. Why is this happening to me? Instead of leaning in and say, wait a minute, why am I being shown this? Why is this happening for me? What am I supposed to learn from this? Which can happen pretty quickly in any given situation.
Yeah.
It's people are going to say, but what about death? That's always, but sometimes death, death is a process. We are going to die. Death is part of life. And there's so much fear based around everything right now that the truth is, if you're afraid of death, then live your life as well as you can right now.
Yes.
Don't wait.
Yeah.
Don't get happy when. Be happy now. Figure out why you're happy. People that keep gratitude journals. I guarantee you'll be able to list 10 great things if you think about it. A soft, cozy bed, a shower with hot water,
Mm.
things that we take for granted, but aren't necessarily given in other cultures. So we're pretty lucky.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. When did this come to be for you, the traumatic growth? When did you learn about that?
Gosh, I don't know. I think I read it somewhere, but part of my story for the listeners is that so 9/11 happens, right? And I have this experience and I'm in a very different place than everyone else because I've been through it before.
Yeah.
And I walked downstairs after watching the second tower fall, or the second tower fell, and then my husband's tower fell. When I say second, I mean 2 World Trade Center. So the South Tower falls first, out of order. The North Tower, it's a long story. That's why there's a book. But I come downstairs. My son was little. I was nursing him. I'd gotten out of the crazy for a couple minutes to just and I walked into my room and it was just so quiet and peaceful. It was like just so surreal. And I walked downstairs and I literally could see like the dust dancing in the sunlight through the windows. And I was
Wow.
just above it or just in this different place, not intentional. This is not thinking now. This is how we're guided.
Yeah.
And, because when you're at shock at that level, it shifts you. And so, I could see that my friends were just out of their minds with fear and terror and just shock.
Yeah.
And as a result, like I kind of didn't have to be. And I saw more like very prescient understandings. Like, first of all, like, hey, it could be 12:30 in the afternoon, like it was the first time, and those buildings could be full. Yeah. Like
Yes.
it was 5 of 9. People hadn't gotten to work yet. So they held 50,000 people. So maybe there was an hour that people got
Oh,
out. Yes.
yes. Oh, I've never even heard of that. Yeah, it was really early.
It was really early because 20 years later, nobody's talking about. So I see 9/11 really differently still to this day than most people. And so anyway, because I was in this calm place, right? I was also being guided by nature because I was a nursing mother and nature's not going to let you go down.
Yeah.
we are here. We are, tiger mamas. It's not going to happen. I also knew that for some reason that it would be 2 years to a new normal. I'd never heard the expression new normal before, and that you have this opportunity to kind of, at this point, I was not trying, but I was just being shown these things. And I now know, looking back, my son was 4 and he was with me when I walked in, and I turned the TV on and my little guy was on my shoulder, and my middle guy said, Mommy, you were like screaming, Ted, 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 and stomping your feet. And I don't remember that.
Wow.
But I do remember waking up out of my wherever I was. I don't know how long it had been, probably a minute or two.
Yeah.
And knowing that I had to go. I had to move forward. I had to get off the couch. I
Yeah.
had 2 little kids and I had to get them through this.
Yeah.
And I think that comes from the fact that we do as mothers, that, we are going to protect our children. And I think also because I was never protected. So I was hyper protective. And, but it was very clear to me, that's all that mattered were my kids, that I couldn't worry about the adults.
Yeah.
It was literally this clear, very clear message. And, excuse my phone, it's ringing. Anyway, so that being said, about 11 o'clock in the morning, I remember standing in my dining room and I could feel what felt like hands on my back. And I was like, wait, whoa, like, what is that? Like, Teddy, is that you? Like, what are you doing? Like, holding me up. And I knew that people were wanting to help me. All people were saying was, can I help you? Can I help you? And nobody could do anything.
Yeah.
There was no doing anything to solve this or care at that time. And in that window, in that second, I had a voice that said to me, Lisa, let them help you. Just like that.
Wow.
Help you. Last thing I wanted.
Yeah.
I was raised in the 60s, 70s, 80s, man. You do not ask for help, receive help. It is a shameful, embarrassing, horrible thing to take help, right?
Yeah.
That's the training.
Yeah.
But I let go. And literally in this metaphoric moment, I kid you not, I was overwhelmed with the sensations of gratitude and humility and this feeling of love that has literally never left me.
Wow.
Mhm.